So one of the major events that took place on that fateful Tuesday, March 13th, was the seizing of police stations across the island. So that was in fact part of the plan of deception and diversion that was organized by Maurice Bishop and his group of NGM folks, right? So there were about 35 police stations across the island, and the plan and the goal was to seize the 35 police stations, take them over, uh, in an effort, of course, to take over the entire country. As police stations were seized, each there was a white flag that was raised. Which signal that that police station had surrendered. So the officers, they surrendered to the NGM and the leaders of the coup, right? So a white flag. So in the video I would have shown you, would have seen the white flag, right? So a white flag, which was the symbol of surrender, and is always the symbol of surrender, and it remains the symbol of surrender today in any, especially during war, anything like that, was raised at each police station. But the seizing of the police stations was one of, as I said, the strategy and tactics employed by Maurice Bishop and the leaders of the revolution in their efforts to take over Grenada and, of course, really begin the revolutionary process. So that's key, right? The police stations, and those in social studies, police stations, the police stations are there to serve and protect the citizens, right? So taking the police station was symbolic in terms of the police station is now under control of the coup leaders, and of course, it meant that the protection of the country was now in the hands of those who had taken over um, leadership of the police stations, which was Maurice Bishop, as I said, Bernard Coard, and those men there. So the second was the burning of the True Blue Barracks. So the True Blue Barracks was burned down, and the True Blue Barracks was the headquarters of a lot of Gary's military forces, if you want to say military, quote unquote. So the barracks were burned down on True Blue Stretch. There was where they were located, and it meant that Gary forces, they are dismantled when those barracks were burnt down. Right. So again, another tactic employed by the coup leaders to really take hold of Grenada on that fateful March 13th day. So the burning of the True Blue Barracks, as the video would have shown, the barracks were burned completely to ground, only galvanized remaining, right? Everything was burnt down, and I said it was the central quarters of where Gary military forces were being housed and held, right? So that was a critical piece to take over, right? The barracks. Radio Grenada. So Radio Grenada, which was the only radio station in Grenada at the time, was captured, and Radio Grenada became the communication headquarters for the those who took over Grenada on March 13th. So when they took over Radio Grenada, they immediately renamed it Radio Free Grenada, and it became the communication headquarters. And the radio station really served as the voice of the revolution, right? So messages or bulletins, as it was called, were broadcasted on a daily basis from Radio Free Grenada, right? So that was another critical point or tactic to have the radio station and to be able to use it for communication. And it became the main headquarters, as mentioned. Hubbard Blaze. So Hubbard Blaze would become and just a little extra history for those who don't know. So Hubbard Blaze would become the first prime minister after the revolution. So when the revolution ended in 1983, we know the U.S. invasion was in October 1983. In 1984, so early January 1984, Howard Blaze became the first prime minister following the revolution, and the prime minister um, put in power by a democratic process of election. So elections were held in 1984 and Howard Blaze became the prime minister. So just a little bit of extra history for those who were unaware. But going back to Radio Grenada, Howard Blaze delivered the first address to the nation on March 13th on Radio Free Grenada, basically telling people, and those words are quoted throughout history, Grenada's history. These are the words delivered by Herbert Blaze. Attention, attention, attention. People of Grenada, the government of the criminal dictator Eric Matthew Gairy has been overthrown. Right? So those words are um, ingrained in our history as the words delivered by Hubert Blaze on March 13th, alerting the entire Grenadian population that the country was had been taken over. The Eric Matthew government had been overthrown, right? Eric Matthew Gairy had been overthrown, right? So that is a critical piece, right? So as I said, the radio station was used as a critical um, tactic in communicating to the masses or to the public at the time about what was taking place as they began to take over the country and instill themselves as the new leaders of Grenada. The Polish training school was also captured, so that was another significant event of the March 13th. So the Polish training school was captured. So again, decreasing the powers of protection and those there to protect Grenada on the Gairy government side. The arrest of Gairy ministers. So on March 13th, the arrest of Gairy ministers. So Gary's ministers, including his wife, so Eric Matthews Gairy wife was Cynthia Gairy, and she as well surrendered. So all Gairy ministers, they were brought to the Radio Free Grenada headquarters, and they were arrested and they were brought there to the radio station headquarters, and they surrendered. When they surrendered, each broadcasted a message on the radio letting the people know that they had surrendered. Right, so all Gary's ministers, again, Gary was out of the country at the time, believed to be in New York, and his ministers, the tactic put in place by Maurice Bishop and the other leaders of the revolution was to round up all Gary's ministers and arrest them and bring them to Radio Free Grenada, where each broadcasted a message of surrender to the public. So that was another key part of the events of March 13th, Tuesday, March 13th, 1979. Phone lines. So once they took over the radio station, they installed phone lines. So about 15 phone lines were installed at Radio Free Grenada, and the purpose of the phone lines really was to increase communication. So it was a method for people, Grenadians, to call into the phone and tell Maurice Bishop and the other coup leaders about where Gary forces were stationed, and so that they can master up their own forces to go and take and capture them or arrest them. Right. So That was what the phone lines were used for. So that was a critical part as well of the tactic to install those phone lines at Radio Free Grenada, of course, to get communication about where Gary's forces were across the island. Right, where exactly people were seeing them. So most of these messages came through secret codes, right? And people would call in and see where Gary's forces were, and that would send out the the coup leaders would have sent out their own forces to capture them, right? And when we talk about Gary forces, mostly of these people were the Mongoose gang, what was known as the Mongoose gang, right? So that was another critical part of the tactics of March 13th, 1979, the phone lines being installed. So before we come to our Maurice Bishop first speech, let's take in a video.